Trump has now come out to announce 35% tariffs on Canada. Trump warns of higher tariffs if Canada retaliates.
Montana farmers are voicing frustrations over the Trump administration's use of tariffs.
Tariffs are having a real impact right here in the Treasure State, with farmers and ranchers feeling it firsthand.
President Trump is proposing new tariffs for roughly 24 countries.
Among them, one of our closest allies, Canada, was slapped with a hefty tariff.
Now a 35% tariff on all non-CUSMA compliant goods.
Imagine waking up to headlines that say the U.S. has just slapped a 35% tariff on Canadian goods. It sounds like another routine trade dispute, right? But this one isn't routine. It's personal. It's about farmers, factories, and families on both sides of the border. And it's about a battle that started with something as ordinary as milk, but grew into a fight that could reshape the entire North American economy. It all began when Donald Trump made his announcement, August 1st, a 35% tariff on Canadian imports. In Washington, the message was crystal clear. The White House wanted to reset trade rules so that America always came out on top, no matter who else paid the price. But Canada wasn't about to play along. Ottawa refused to back down, shutting down negotiations, standing shoulder to shoulder with its farmers and industries. And here's where the cracks started to show. Not in Canada, but right here in America. In Montana, barns went quiet. Farmers, who had long depended on steady sales across the border, suddenly found themselves with tanks full of milk and nowhere to send it. Prices dropped, bills piled up, and the frustration grew louder. The people who had voted for Trump in hopes of stability were now watching their livelihoods slip away. But why dairy? Why attack milk, butter, and cheese, of all things? To Washington, Canada's dairy supply system looked unfair, an invisible wall that limited imports and kept American farmers locked out. But to Canada, it wasn't a wall, it was a shield, a system designed to keep small family farms alive, to stop the chaos of overproduction, and to guarantee a fair income. For Canadians, defending dairy wasn't about economics, it was about survival, it was about sovereignty. And so when Trump tried to use tariffs as leverage, Ottawa drew a red line, no compromise, no bargaining chip. Parliament even passed a law banning any future government from giving up supply management in trade talks. That's how serious they were. But here's the twist most Americans never heard about. Trump claimed Canada was hitting U.S. dairy with tariffs of 275% or even 300%. But the truth? Under the very trade deal Trump's own first administration signed, the USMCA, tens of thousands of tons of U.S. milk are allowed into Canada tariff-free, zero tariffs. And America hasn't even reached half of that quota. Those sky-high numbers only apply after the quota is full. In other words, the tariffs Trump complained about, they weren't even in effect. Still, the political fight had begun, and tariffs don't just stay in one lane. What started as a dairy dispute quickly spread to steel, aluminum, and cars. And that's when the damage became impossible to ignore. Think about Detroit. General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, companies that live and breathe cross-border supply chains. Every car built in Michigan depends on dozens of parts made in Canada. With tariffs soaring to 50% on some materials, costs exploded. GM lost $1 billion in one quarter. Stellantis lost $2.7 billion in 6 months. Ford's numbers were so bad, analysts didn't even want to say them out loud. And for consumers, prices on some cars jumped by as much as $9,000. All of this from a trade war that began with milk. Meanwhile, Canada wasn't folding. Instead of panicking, Ottawa played the long game. They locked in new deals with Europe and Asia. They supported their farmers and businesses with subsidies. They made sure no community was left behind. And while American farmers were stuck with barns full of unsold goods, Canadian producers were carving out fresh opportunities overseas. It's a paradox. Trump's strategy was to hit hard, force opponents to bend, and claim victory. And sometimes that worked. Japan, South Korea, even parts of Europe chose compromise to avoid pain. But Canada said no. And because their economy is so tightly linked with ours, the tariffs started bouncing back, hitting American industries harder than Canadian ones. questions. Here's what makes this story bigger than dairy. It's not really about cartons of milk or blocks of cheese. It's about whether the U.S. can use tariffs as a weapon, and whether allies will accept that weapon without fighting back. Canada's refusal is being watched all over the world. Friends are taking notes, rivals are exploiting the cracks, and in the middle of it all, American farmers and auto workers are asking a simple question. Are these tariffs protecting us, or are they destroying us? And that's where we are now. Two neighbors locked in a standoff, neither willing to blink. On one side, Trump betting that maximum pressure will force Ottawa to cave. On the other, Canada betting that it can outlast the storm, backed by unity at home and new partners abroad. So the real question isn't whether tariffs can make milk cheaper or cars more expensive. The real question is, who breaks first? Will Canada fold under pressure, or will American workers be the ones to pay the price for a fight that began with nothing more than a glass of milk?